boxing,
beats and rhymes.
No one
can do it better.
Terence was going to tee off on Canelo after that shove at the New York presser. Dana White and the security got in between. Terence was going to tee off. You could see him smiling. You know what I mean? Whether he would have ended up like Caleb, another fighter Canelo pushed. Caleb came back with that left hand, which Canelo slipped and countered with his own right hand slap. Would Crawford have ended up like that? But it's heating up. Stupid comment from Canelo saying there's nothing different about Crawford in comparison to his previous opponents, when it clearly is. Aside from Mayweather, I would say Crawford is the second best fighter he's faced. Better than Golovkin, better than Erislandy Lara. It's tight between Crawford and Bivol, but I'd still give Crawford the edge. Crawford has knocked out 11 of his last 12. Turki Al-Sheikh, bankrolling these big fights, said, "We will have in this fight and our next fight a bonus for a knockout." He didn't specify how much the bonus would be. This is the new initiative in Turkey's attempt to eradicate Tom and Jerry fights. So, do the rest of the fighters on the card get this knockout bonus incentive, or is it just the main event? "However I got to fight, I'm going to win," said Crawford. He said he's not going to let no one tell him how to fight when he's been fighting his whole life. He said he won't be running, but he'll be doing a lot of touching. That's Crawford's response, not impressed with Turkey's doubling down that there'll be no Mickey Mouse fights. He wants smashing face and blood, but Crawford's going to do it his way.
Boxing,
Beats and rhymes.
no one
can do it better.
They got it scored. A couple of them got Rodriguez up ahead. Rodriguez kind of losing a bit of momentum, but he's still in it. I mean, he's got my guy cut. Rodriguez throwing them little cupping uppercuts inside. That's a good left hand from Rodriguez. Hopefully he's got a bit of jet lag from all that travelling, man. It don't look like him. See, he's used to fighting on the road. These fights are dangerous, bro. They're dangerous because he's used to this. He's used to the toe-to-toe warfare. He's used to going in people's backyards. Great right hand from Rodriguez. Maybe he's not that big a puncher despite the 27 knockouts. Because, like, Galal's taking flush shots and walking through them. Have you seen that? He's walking through flush shots. All right, well, both have got injuries, but they don't seem to have deteriorated. Toe-to-toe in the center of the ring, people. The pattern hasn't changed. They're just fighting inside. Toe-to-toe, toe-to-toe. Oh, Galal getting through their right uppercuts there. They're working inside. Illegal usage of the head by Galal, but the referee does nothing. See, they're fighting their way out of the clinches, bro. This is what I'm saying, like, people talking about, no, Tom and Jerry fight. Like, boxing's different to the other combat sports. The other combat sports, they can't mess with boxing, bro. In boxing, you fight for 36 flipping minutes, bro. Right? You don't get the opportunity to ground and pound and lie on the floor for fucking minutes. Wrestling. No, you got to strike. You throw strike after strike. You know what I mean? Look at this. Look. They haven't stopped. They threw flipping leather from the first bell right up until now. And they haven't slowed up. They haven't really slowed up. They're not looking to clinch. If they do get tangled up, they're trying to punch out. Turkey, we don't need to tell our boxers to do crap, bro. You don't need to tell our boxers to do crap. They've been putting it down for years. Way before any Saudi input got in the game. They've been putting it down for years.
I've been in this game for years.
Galal Yafai, his record fell to 9-1 with 7 inside the distance. His opponent elevated his record to 40 wins, 6 losses, 1 loss, 1 draw, 27 inside the distance. Rodriguez, post-fight, said, "We felt the only way to win was they had to steamroller Galal." And that's how they got the win. They said they were facing a star. He was fighting at home. He was swimming against the current, so he had to work hard. Rodriguez is now setting his sights on Taraji Kenshiro, who's back in action in July. He's the WBC 115-pound champion and the WBA unified champion. Yafai hurt from a left uppercut early, blood pouring down his face from a cut around his left eye. Him realizing that the fight could get stopped because of such a bad injury may have disrupted his game plan, whatever the game plan was. But he seemed very anxious to land his punches. But he did have his moments in this fight and put together some very good combinations. He just didn't have no contingency for when after he threw his punches. After he threw his punches, he found 2 or 3 coming back at him, and the volume was relentless from the Mexican. Rodriguez was also cut above his left eye, and it was a bad cut. The ringside doctor checked his eye because it was in bad condition. And that would have been controversial if they stopped Rodriguez, who was in the ascendancy, out punching GALAL. There was controversy, in my opinion, that an earlier knockdown wasn't scored in Rodriguez's favour. It was ruled a push. But then the combinations that Rodriguez was landing very frequently caught up with GALAL in the 12th, and he was decked. Great toe-to-toe battle. Rodriguez looked better when he was pushed on the back foot and forced to fight off the back foot, although there was no technical boxing as such from either man. Yafai did well to get to the final bell. But as Eddie Hearn said, this was a man talking about Rodriguez who would not be denied tonight. The engine was incredible. Yeah, it was off the chain. It led to a lot of people speculating whether he was on something. Had Yafai in trouble from the first round on the old jelly legs, and the body shots couldn't have did GALAL any good as he tried himself to sustain his attacks. But he was too one-dimensional, in all truth. It was an uphill task. You're fighting somebody who can punch hard, punch often, and takes a good shot. That's hard to beat. Like, do we have to look at Robert McCracken? There's only so much you can do with boxing training. The rest you've got to pick up by either sparring consistently or fighting in a ring. These Mexicans throw punches from weird angles, and they throw a lot of them. Whatever you've been taught in defense, it's not going to teach you how to block 7-punch combinations. So he was up against it. His opponent had way more fights than him as well. No one's really pointing that out. GALAL had 9 fights. Why has he not had more fights, GALAL? Turn pro 2022. Just wasn't meant to be. Haven't heard no post-fight interviews from GALAL. Just has to take his L and take a long rest and come back. Great fight though. The Mexican's output broke the CompuBox record for flyweights throwing punches in a 12-rounder. That's what GALAL was up against.
Boxing
Beats and rhymes.
No one
can do it better.
Let's turn our attentions to the undercard. Conor Walker takes his record to 16-3-1 with 7 inside the distance and made the second defence of his British welterweight title. Wolverhampton, not a long drive to Birmingham, is it? That's where Conor's from. And for the second time in consecutive fights, like when he won the British title, his taller, rangier opponents succumbed after taking a lead. The last time around, it was Harry Scarf. He folded in the 11th when Conor won the title. Liam Taylor was finding the mark with power punches on the smaller Conor Walker, but Walker did start getting his own jab off, and Taylor's nose was blooded up pretty bad. He was still landing his straight shots, but it was the mental pressure that broke Liam Taylor. He knew no matter what he threw, that Conor was going to be right in front of him and remained an intimidating presence. He finished the job in the 7th with that left hook and explained he stuck to the game plan to an extent. It's the little things that I do that people don't see. I'm on you forever. I don't let you have a second off. And then he let Turkey know, come on, show me the money. He wants some of that Turkey money. And if Turkey is demanding no Mickey Mouse fights, well, this is the type of guy you bring over there. Well, not Mickey Mouse, no Tom and Jerry fights. This is the type of guy you bring over there. You don't necessarily bring the elite fighters over to Riyadh season if you don't want Tom and Jerry fights. That's not how it works. Not all the elite fighters give you crash and bang. Why do people think there's this necessary correlation that I'm an elite fighter, I have to give you crash and bang? It doesn't work like that. Conor Walker will give you crash and bang. You know, Terence Crawford doesn't necessarily give you crash and bang, although he does have 11 knockouts in his last 12. But there's more than one way to skin a rat for the Terence Crawford type fighters. Or Bivol, even though they don't fight the same, Bivol don't give you crash and bang. It looks like Lewis Crocker and Paddy Donovan are going to be fighting for that IBF strap as Boots moves up to 154. Like, Crocker shouldn't be there. He was lucky last time out against Paddy Donovan that Paddy got DQ'd. And he was definitely lucky to get that decision over Conor Walker. Definitely lucky. So don't be in the comment section saying Conor don't belong at Riyadh season or amongst the world ranked. Yeah, he deserves a shot at the big money. Great performance. Another entertaining, meaningful performance. First defence of the British title. Well done, Conor Walker. Big up Everything Boxing. He said he'd like to see Pat McCormack versus Conor Walker for that British welterweight title. Now, that would be some fight. That would be some fight. McCormack would go in the favourite, although some may say it's a little too early for him, but he's not a young kid no more and he had an extensive amateur background. This is the right time for him to take a fight like that.
Boxing
Beats and rhymes.
No one
can do it better.
Pat Brown, 6'6" cruiserweight, likes to have a tear up at mid-range, doesn't he? Ivan Duka, who's now 5-5-0, found it relatively easy to get off a few power punches. And while I'm not going to try and convince you that Pat Brown said, go on, hit me, he seemed very comfortable to let his opponent throw so he himself could get counter-punching opportunities. And it worked pretty well. The right to the body, the left to the body, then the left uppercut to the head was a thunderous combination. And that was the fight ender in the second. They're keeping him busy. He debuted in March in a pretty competitive fight, which he won in 4 rounds. He's got this stoppage win over Duka. And he'll be on the undercard of Harlem Eubank versus Jack Catterall on the 5th of July against Lewis Oakford, who is a pretty good opponent. I like the activity. If he continues at this rate, he'll be headlining shows by the end of the year with his fast developing fan base. And look, here's the thing. I'm not saying he can't be world champion, but he doesn't need to be world champion. Johnny Fisher, despite what people may rebuttal when I say this, is a success story. Because few boxers are able to get any financial foothold worth talking about in professional boxing. But Pat has more talent than Johnny Fisher. Way more talent. He's a former Olympian, and I expect him to go way further than Johnny Fisher. I'm just not sure where exactly. He's only had 2 fights.
Boxing
Beats and rhymes.
No one
can do it better.
I'm watching Peter McGrail versus Ian Baluta. And Dennis McCann popped for peds in the build-up to his fight with Peter McGrail on a Riyadh season card. We haven't seen Dennis in a ring for a minute now. Dennis had 2 fights with Peter McGrail's opponent on Saturday, Ian Baluta. The first one, they robbed Baluta. The second one, Dennis looked really good. Looked really strong, didn't he? Looked very assured about himself. And he took a points decision. And shortly after, he popped.
But the bag popped. Damn!
You look at Dennis's face in the photos around the time he popped in comparison to a few months previously when he had that baby face. He's a ped violator. And he needed peds because he wouldn't have beat Peter McGrail. Peter McGrail would have been too good a boxer for Dennis McCann. I heard Curtis Woodhouse say that first, and I wasn't sure, but I see where he's coming from. Peter McGrail would have schooled Dennis McCann. McGrail, he used his high guard pretty well, and his footwork was excellent. He stayed on top of Baluta, waited for Baluta to punch, took a little step back, came back with his counters brilliantly. Peter, not a huge puncher, very influenced by that twitchy Lomachenko movement, highly influenced by that. Not as good as Lomachenko, obviously, but who is? And was creating some very interesting angles to put his punches together. That's what would have beat Dennis McCann. And he looked good on Saturday. He should have been given a knockdown in the 5th when that backhand sent Baluta into the ropes and the ropes held him up. It should have been scored a knockdown. Peter was cut, but that was by an elbow, and blood poured down the right hand side of his face, but it was never an issue in this fight. There is a worry that he could have issues with scar tissue, but similar to Lomachenko, he uses that footwork, not dissimilar to Manny Pacquiao, to discombobulate. Then he's able to have his way with them. And let me just say, a majority decision to the Mile, who scored it 95-95. You shouldn't be allowed to judge no more fights. Not in this country. Bob Williams. What a muppet.
Boxing
Beats and rhymes.
No one
can do it better.
TIAH AYTON stopped Sela Osagi in 3 and looked very impressive. The 18-year-old, managed by Brian Peters, who handles Beatrice Ferreira and Katie Taylor, is in good hands with the management and promotion behind her. And she looked very purposeful, good footwork, good straight punches, good snap, Scored a couple of knockdowns in the third, which ended matters. And she impressed. Tia weighed in at 120. So she'll be around the bantamweight limit, I'm assuming. She was too strong for her opponent and was able to find the mark with that 1-2 from early. Good performance. Good card from up there in Brum.
Boxing. Beats and rhymes.
No one can do it better.
It's been a tremendous journey. 12 years of unbelievable success, Krassyuk wrote on Instagram. Two young dreamers met each other to change the game back in 2013. I gave you my word and I kept it. At the time, no one believed we were capable of achieving what we set out to do, but by the grace of God, we completed the mission impossible. Krassyuk then noted the milestones we conquered together, beginning in September 2016 when Usyk defeated Krzysztof Glowacki to win the WBO cruiserweight title. Usyk achieved this feat in just his 10th pro fight, 4 years on from his Olympic triumph in London. By July 2018, Usyk became undisputed cruiserweight champion with a masterclass against Murat Gassiev. 6 years later, the Ukrainian hero sat atop the heavyweight division after defeating Tyson Fury. Thank you for all we've gone through and for the honor to be the lifetime promoter of the double undisputed. The Instagram post featured the 1995 hit Time to Say Goodbye, performed by Andrea Bocelli and Sarah Brightman. So it all seems amicable. The parting of ways of Alex Krassyuk and Alexander Usyk. I'm sure Klimas is still there. I guess at this stage, with the Saudis bankrolling Usyk's fights, he's past how many fights now? There's not much of a role for Krassyuk to play. Usyk's next fight is at Wembley Stadium against Daniel Dubois. No matter how cordial they are with each other, he'd be taking a huge chunk out of Usyk's purse, and it may not be warranted at this stage of Usyk's career. How many fights does Usyk have left? But big up Krassyuk, he's been there from the start of Usyk's pro journey. K2 Promotions.
Boxing. Beats and rhymes.
No one can do it better.